Welcome to Shorty's SuperCoach, and today we're going to have a look at the Sydney Swans as part of Shorty's Shortlist as we take a look at each club's prospects as far as SuperCoach is concerned for 2016. As the release of SuperCoach to the public draws very, very close, it's just 3 or 4 days away now on the Friday. And we're going to have a look at the Swans, as I mentioned. It's not going to be a typical preview where we look at your obvious picks. I'm not going to tell you how good Josh Kennedy is because everybody knows that. He'll deliver. We're going to have a look at a few blokes that I think should be well and truly on your radar, and a few players that, you know, offer some value, are very worth discussing, and a few young players that are worth keeping an eye on as well. But we're going to start with a man who is always high on the discussion list as far as pre-season talks are concerned, and it's Lance Franklin. And once again, he'll be high on the discussion, and there's even more thrown in there for us to talk about because he's just such an interesting prospect and a player that I love and rate extremely highly, and he's one of my favourite players in the AFL. But is he going to be a SuperCoach favourite in 2016? That's what we want to know. I'll run you through a few of his numbers. Since bursting on the scene in 2008 with that 107 average, backing up a pretty strong 2007, he has been really up and down to an extent. 87.9 after that big breakout in 2009, then a hot 3 years where he averaged 107, 111, 116. Just rough numbers there. And then in 2013 dropped back to 90.4, 99.9 in 14, and last year, of course, 87.1. So he's a roller coaster sort of player, as we know. Buddy is like that, and of course those numbers come with a bit of a change of environment, obviously switching clubs, and a change in his position, the way it is being played, that key forward, sort of moulding into a more mobile player, which we know he can do, but the position that he is perhaps best at or has been made his name at has slightly changed. The groundwork is changing as far as key forward, so that's worth noting. But look, it's been well documented that Buddy struggled with some mental issues late for the Swans, and of course missed the finals and really struggled towards the back end of last year. And of course, that stuff's, you know, far more important than footy. He had to step away from it, and we hope that he's bouncing back on and off the field, and it does look like he's back at training and enjoying his footy, which is great. So we're going to look at some of his numbers as far as SuperCoach is concerned. He also had a few back problems last year in combination with those other issues, but he didn't start the year bad at all. First 11 games, he averaged 98.6, but then the last 6 were just awful, averaging 66, and just some un-Buddy-like numbers. Okay, sure, he may throw in the odd 50, but soon enough you're going to see well and truly a 120 plus. But that just didn't happen. He ended it badly. He was out of the game, out of the club, which was sad to see. But I do think that he should be back this season with all that stuff taken care of. Of course, it doesn't just vanish in a few months. He's something he's going to have to work on. But if he is on top of it and he's playing NAB Challenge, he's getting through that, I think he's a man you have to have in your side. Every number and every stat just about dropped off last year. He held strong with 3 tackles per game, but that was about it. It's his lowest goal tally since 2006, which is quite an unbelievable record. But look, he should bounce back. I believe he can. He's 29 years of age come next season, but there's huge upside with Buddy. You can get him at a price tag of an average of 87.1, which is just well under the odds as far as Franklin is concerned. What he can produce is a 3-figure average, and they are always gold. Even better if you can get him well below what you should be expecting to get. So Lance Franklin, high on my radar, no doubt. Another man that I think you should just absolutely lock in is Jarrad McVeigh. He's the clear choice down in the back line as far as midfield defenders go. Sometimes we get a few of them, sometimes we get none of them. There's often one, and McVeigh is the man. He's sort of been that fella who drifts in and out of our sides. He's a funny one, McVeigh, because as soon as he's a pure midfielder, we just don't care about him because he doesn't have that upper ceiling that we really need to go 110 plus. But sure enough, add that D onto the midfield status, lock him in. We're his best friend again. So it's ironic, but that's the way this game rolls. He's had that status a couple of times in the past, and he's a consistent man, and that's what we can pretty much ask for in the back line. I mean, you don't want to look for too much down in defence. If we can find consistent 90s to 100s, will be happy with that. And McVeigh, that is his blueprint. Since 2008, his averages have ranged between 93.8 and 106.1, and he fell in the middle of those numbers last year with an average of 100.6. So he will be 31, that's worth considering, and I think the Swans will give more midfield time to some younger types, i.e. Mitchell, Parker, Heaney, Mills, etc. But I do think that his ball skills and ball use off that half-back flank is something that will be used. And the high rotation through the midfield this day and age, you're going to get a run there. And he's an experienced player. You can never get enough of those through the midfield. And I'm sure he'll be used in a great fashion for the Swans and being a very effective weapon. As should be the case for our SuperCoach sides, because you will be paying $540K. But it's well and truly worth it. He's consistent. He's capable of big scores. He had a quality final series last year just to reassure us that, his best football is still there and about. So he's a man I'll be simply locking in. I think many people will, and for good reason. He's a strong pick. He'll be a top 6 defender come year's end. So I think you just lock him in now because that price will probably drop and fall ever so slightly and go up a little bit. But I don't think he'll fall away due to that consistency. So grab McVeigh, no doubt. Luke Parker is a man I will talk about as well. Not as much phase about him, I suppose. He's a tempting option because of that 49 where he had that nasty injury against the Pies in round 20 where it was a broken ankle, which was pretty brutal sort of injury, and it kept him out for a serious amount of time. He did return quicker than expected. He didn't play another game in 2015, but he pushed pretty close, which wasn't expected to happen. So that game obviously dropped his average down to 99.7 off the 19 games. That was after trying to back up what was the breakout year in 2014, 108.5. But look, if we take away that 49, which bear in mind he was killing it until he got injured, he averages 102.6, which is reasonable. But these days you can only get him as a midfielder, so that's something you've got to consider. He's slightly underpriced. You'll still have to pay a bit of coin, but if you believe he can get back to that 2014 form, then he's certainly worth considering. And you might look at him because he is slightly underpriced, and for what he's capable of, he is a man in his peak and coming into his prime, so you may have a sneaky look at him at about $540K. But I wouldn't hugely be endorsing it. I think there's better options, especially in the midfield, which I've covered off a couple of times. But now we'll look at a few younger players. I've spoken about the likes of McVeigh, that older brigade in the midfield, and these younger players coming through as the Swans try to keep themselves at the top end of the ladder. Callum Mills is a man who'll get plenty of opportunity next season. They had to bid pretty high for him, such as his talent. He's a highly touted man, 187 centimetres, which allows him to be a strong overhead mark. That's one of the real qualities they talk about. And he's ready to play. The Swans recruiting manager said he's an elite talent, and they expect him to play plenty of footy, of course, over his career, but many predicting that he'll see a fair bit of footy in his first season. You'll have to pay $211,000 for him. He's not cheap, but that comes with the bargain, I suppose. That's part of the deal, being a top pick. And if you're going to back him in to play a bit of footy, maybe you might like that price tag. You might snap him up. But Jack Hiscox is another man that has been highly touted at the Swans, an elite runner. One of the best runners the club has ever seen. Just dominates the 3K time trial, the beep test, the endurance, any sort of time trial. He seems to dominate. He's an academy player, 21 years of age come season start, and you'll get him at 123K through the midfield. So he's a player you'd certainly look at, I think. He's a quality and highly rated youngster at the Swans, so I think watch his NAB Challenge, of course. It's hard to really comment on rookies at the moment because so much happens through the NAB Challenge and how they play, and you can't really lock anyone in until they get a round one berth. But keep an eye out for him, worth considering, no doubt. Another highly touted Swan. This is sort of their next group coming through, this next generation of Swans midfielders. Isaac Heaney slightly relates to Mills in the way that Heaney was pick 18 in 2014 and was in some way, basically the reason they brought in that bidding system, because it was deemed that pick 18 for a guy of Heaney's quality that's probably a top 3 or 4 pick in the draft just wasn't fair to the rest, and the Swans have had to pay top dollar for Mills. But look, Heaney burst onto the scene, kicked 4 goals against the Giants in his third game of footy and ran 396 SuperCoach points. But from there on out, it was disappointing for him. He had a knee injury, suffered a few niggles, the bash and crash of AFL footy on a younger body, but he certainly looked ready to go. He looked at home at senior level and extremely exciting, especially for a gun midfielder as a junior who was playing off a half-forward flank, still producing reasonable numbers. A season average of 70 from his 12 games, which you'll certainly take as a first season, granted the amount of high talent running through that Swans midfield, not allowing him to get great opportunity. But look, a quick little thing, you can select him as a forward. That's the main reason I'm talking about him. Such a great talent, plenty of potential to really up that average, and being a forward, you might have a bit of a look at him around that 377,000 mark. But one little bit I will point out, and it's just a small sample size, but I think it highlights nicely where Heaney perhaps is. He ended the season with scores of 117 and 103 versus Gold Coast and St Kilda. Had the 21 touches against the Saints, 8 marks, 4 goals. Gold Coast in the final round, 17 touches, 8 marks, 2 goals, 200s for SuperCoach there, very good. But then the next following 2 weeks, obviously the Saints and Gold Coast Suns weren't the best opposition going around, playing against more players perhaps in the junior rungs of their football career and more in his division, I guess you might say. Then against North Melbourne and Fremantle in the big heated of finals footy, he didn't stand up as well, just the 13 touches in both those games and 58 and 63 SuperCoach points respectively. So perhaps it says that he's not quite ready to take on the big boys just yet. Mind you, I can easily see him averaging 85 plus, given he was injury-interrupted season, and he's such a talent. I think he could average anywhere from 85 to 95. Probably not enough to really convince you, but I just think we'll probably see his best footy, as is often the case, after the 3rd, 4th year. But Heaney could be an exception to the rule. Just finally, I'll round off on Ben McGlynn. Probably not a guy you're going to consider too highly, but as I say, I like to find a little bit of value, and a point of difference is always nice. 87.7 off the 7 games last year. Will he get a discount? I'm not sure. He hasn't on the fan footy that I've been having a look at. 99.9 in 2014. Obviously had that midfield role and he used it to perfection. Really upped his average big time from what he used to be, a small half-forward flanker. So you'll get him at a cheaper price. He is a forward. But as I've talked about over the last few minutes, I can easily see the likes of Heaney, Mitchell, Parker, Mills, etc. getting plenty more game time and given opportunity through the midfield. So McGlynn, you would think, he's an elder statesman of the game now, you would think would suffer off the back of that and wouldn't get as much midfield time. But again, have a look at the NAB challenge. That's what it's there for. That's what we look for in SuperCoach, those positional changes and where guys are playing. But that's a wrap up for the Sydney Swans. Thanks for joining me and having a listen in again. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully a few guys that you didn't think of have come to light, and you might put them on your radar as well. But if I've missed anyone, certainly let me know. Give me some feedback on these previews. There's a couple to go now. We'll get them out before Friday's SuperCoach release, just so they're all out there ready to go when SuperCoach really gets rolling. Give the channel a subscribe, of course. Give the video a like. And as I say each and every time, plenty of SuperCoach content coming your way, so keep clicking back to the channel. Catch you guys.